tune. Are we live? Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jim and Rob Over-Analyze Movies, the live video podcast for people who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. Folks, tonight we got a great show for you. We're going to overanalyze Warner Brothers' latest entry into the superhero comic book movie market game, Blue Beetle. So, let's get into it. Yes, we got to do that. But first, let's give a big welcome to my co-host with the most, Winnipeg's own Jim Chicken Kiev Chaboyko.
That's a new one.
How you doing, my friend?
Good. I'm like a big piece of chicken stuffed with garlic butter, and I don't know what else.
And you're even unmuted.
Yes, good. Yes. Mommy moo mo. I have to say, I'm feeling like I'm back in the 70s. We just had, unfortunately, Suzanne Summers just passed away. Bill Bixby was trending on Twitter today for some reason that I still can't understand. And this movie has me thinking about the greatest American hero, noteworthy. If you remember that. So,
I do vaguely remember that.
Yeah. So,
Jim, we've got a few things, but one of them is Mailbag. Sorry, let me give you a proper sound. Mailbag. I don't long-term or Sebi new I don't know. She has been a subscriber. Louise has been a subscriber of ours for quite some time.
Hi, Louise.
But she recently chimed in on one of our videos. Actually, from back in the winter, last winter. And that is, look at us here, Jim, younger, leaner even.
Wow.
But yeah, she had a couple comments on our video regarding the Banshees of Inisherin. And I was able to answer her questions. She had a couple of lovely kind notes on our take on this film. Always nice to praise a subscriber, a viewer.
Yes, yeah.
Agreeing with us. But she did have, and I believe this is something for you to answer. She did say, how did she put it? She had not realized that it was the same director as for this flick as it was for Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and can't believe you didn't like that movie, Jim. Sam Rockwell's performance alone totally made it for her. Jim?
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that? What do you have to say about that?
I actually saw that movie before I became an unprofessional or as an amateur movie critic. So I didn't write any notes down about it. I can't sort of access my journals about it necessarily, but I too like Sam Rockwell. I've got a lot of time for him generally. I think he sort of complements everything that he's in. And especially something like Galaxy Quest, and he's got the chops. But if I remember correctly, I thought it was a little overstuffed, and it sort of read to me like a European's criticism of like the American Midwest, which seems a lot of times it's like low hanging fruit sometimes. I think, but yeah, it just didn't speak to me. And I don't begrudge anybody for liking something I don't like. So that's literally to each their own. So, but that's just sort of going off memory.
Disappointed, Louise.
No,
no.
Well,
you know what, Jim, I don't know about you. One of the things I love about our subscribers and our chatters is some of the best on the internet. They've got insightful comments. We rarely
Yeah.
get trolls. We do get them every now and then,
Yeah.
but, you know, they're dealt with pretty quickly. And, you know.
No, I'm just kidding.
Sure. What were you doing there?
I was just a little of this.
a little, yeah, that's what a couple of middle-aged white guys from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada are going to be doing.
Exactly. With no martial arts training or anything.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before we move forward?
Just thanks, Louise. And I understand that there's somebody, or I took a peek, and there's somebody in the chat there that a new name in the chat.
You're absolutely right, Jim. Let me just pull that up. You can see it's Drew, The View with Drew.
Hey, Drew.
Great to see you here, man. He's been a subscriber for a bit, but more importantly, he shouted us out a couple of weeks on his channel, along with a couple of other great subscribers here, Jim, or a couple of great channels, I should say. I've subscribed to them all. Let's Get Cinematic, Midnight Reactions, Thrash Pond to Ponds 8348, which is just an awesome channel name. And that's us, David Diggs, and Paul Tams 450. And so, yeah, Drew from The View with Drew, and of course, go check his channel out. I've interacted with a few times since he came up on my radar, and very cool experience. And but thank you very much, Drew. Thank you so much for that online love, and both Jim and I, of course, really appreciate that. And here, you know what? Let's give a round of applause. Whoop. Whoops, enough of nonsense.
My cinematographer says I shouldn't put my hands in front of my face, and by the lighting, I have to do this. So I got to get my blocking down a little bit better.
We've got one more person, a quick shout out to a long-term friend of the channel for many years, Dragon Movie Guy. Great to see you here, man.
Go Seattle.
Right. I think it's time, Jim. Jim, I believe it's time to get back to the flick at hand. Of course, we are talking about Blue Beetle. Of course, here's the log line from IMDb. An alien scarab. Jim, an alien scarab chooses Jamie Reyes to be its symbiotic host, bestowing the recent college graduate with a suit of armor that's capable of extraordinary powers. Extraordinary powers. Forever changing his destiny as he becomes the superhero known as... Wait a second. Blue Beetle.
That's so... You should just do the whole show like that. Scare the crap out of everyone.
Jim, would
awesome.
you mind... do us a solid and give us a rundown of who's in front of and behind the camera on this flick.
Certainly. And so I am reading this out because I'm unfamiliar with some of the names. So directed by Angel Manuel Soto. It stars Xolo Maradueña, as well as Adriana Barraza, Damian Alcazar, Raul Max Trujillo is the heavy, I guess, the big bad. Of course, Susan Sarandon and George Lopez would probably be the two names that most people are familiar with. It's also got Harvey Guillen from What We Do in the Shadows, and edited by Craig Alpert, music by Bobby Krilic, and cinematography by Paweł Porozelski. So there you go.
Jim, correct me.
I might be forgetting
if
something.
I'm wrong. The woman who plays Jamie's mom,
Yes,
and I am pulling up her.
Baraza.
Thank you. Folks, if you've got a long memory or you've watched a lot of movies, especially of Mr. Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger's oeuvre, that she was can we call her the damsel? The prisoner / damsel in Predator. And
Oh,
I
was
was
she?
like, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Like not Nana Reyes, but here, let me pull it up here. Where is she in the list? Oh my goodness.
I should also mention that the voice of the alien is provided by Becky G, which is she's a pretty well-known Latin
Heaven
pop
forbid.
star.
Good Lord, at times
Can't find her?
Jim, I detest IMDb at
Do you?
times. But you know what? I have other sources, and we will zero in on her in a. Oh, there we go.
Adriana.
No. Elpidia. Oh, and I'm
Oh
probably,
no, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, you're
I'm
right.
probably
You're right.
mispronouncing this. Elpidia Carrillo. Again, this is her back in 2010, but you will remember her from of course Predator, which the OG Predator. All right, let's get back to the movie that we're actually.
And the
talking
Baraza
about.
woman was the grandmother, right?
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
So we got to get that straight.
What are you
Yeah.
talking about? What are you talking about, Jim? All right. Before we get into the spoiler zone, let's do see it or skip it. Spoiler-free see it or skip it. Jim, why don't you give us your spoiler-free see it or skip it?
Sure. I'd give this a soft see it. A lot of familiar comic book origin story beats. It sort of redeems itself, I think, in the third act. The family aspect of it is pretty important. It's neat to see. Even the big bad guy is Latino, so it's like a full on kind of Latin experience, and I thought that was interesting. But it was a lot of familiar stuff. The first little bit, third act that won me over.
Yeah. For myself, Jim, I'm going to say it's a solid see it, especially now that it's out on video. Like, I mean. Maybe you don't want to spend $25 for premium video on demand to buy the thing. That said, notwithstanding that we invest. That said, I saw it in the theater and I enjoyed it. I was happy I went and saw it in the theater. And when I rewatched, I'm like, oh, this holds up. I think it's the reason I'd say it's a solid see it is. Notwithstanding you're absolutely right. Some of these tropes, you've seen all these beats before. That said, it's got a heart, and it takes it not just from a Latin American angle, but what I would call a working class angle. Is it a class conscious film?
Yeah.
I wouldn't go that far, but it does take it from a working class angle. And not just in one throwaway line, Batman was a fascist or is a fascist. And so I think for those reasons, and it's got heart, gets me in the feels. So
I got a point to back that up. I realized today I was doing something totally irrelevant to I was doing the dishes or in the shower or something. And I thought, oh my God, Blue Beetle doesn't have a tuxedo gala scene in it.
Not once. Not one. You're right. Yeah.
One of the few superhero movies that don't have some party. I'm being a little bit facetious,
there
but
is a
so
party,
many
but
of them
it's
have.
a villain's party.
Yes. Yeah.
There is a fancy party, but we're going to the villain's lair, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
That when you are in the fancy house, it's through the eyes of the help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that out of the way, I think it's time, Jim, to get into the spoiler zone. And let me ask you this right off the bat.
Sure.
This movie, and let me pull up like it's hilarious, Jim. This flick, it's got 78% tomato meter, widely reviewed because it got a big wide release.
Yeah.
92% audience score. And I mean, Rotten Tomatoes isn't a perfect indicator of quality, but I think it is a pretty effective at capturing the gist of something. And I think a lot of those those tomatoes that it was given, the hey, go see it kind of things, were like ours, soft to solid, but still they like the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's considered a flop.
Yeah.
It barely made, I believe the latest numbers, and I'm of course I'm quoting Wikipedia here, so you know, take it for what it's worth. But
Sure.
you know what, 129 million global box office against a budget of 104 million. Folks, that's a loser if it's all their sales stopped there. Of course, they don't stop there, but that doesn't include prints and advertising, which are at least 50% and usually 100% of the production budget. You know, so it's got to make, 2 to 3 times as much to break even. Because of course, after that first weekend, the studio doesn't get all the money, right? So yeah, given that it's a box office flop, why do you think it was a box office flop? I got some hot takes from the media, but I was wondering, let's get your ideas first.
Okay. Well,
And
I wrote down
folks, same in the chat.
Mhm.
Okay, go for it, Jim. Sorry.
Before I forget, I posted a picture just today on my Twitter account, which is down below here, of Times Square and the gigantic Blue Beetle ad that they had up when I was in New York in August. So yeah, I did have some profile, but there's a couple of things also on the Wikipedia that it says that a hurricane interrupted one of the either the first weekend or the second weekend, whatever. It was an August release, and typically August releases are for those sort of it's like the island of misfit toys. It's the strange movies. Personally, I always had a soft spot for August releases. They were kind of the weirdo summer movies that I always liked as a kid. So you look forward to all these strange. Sometimes you get some foreign movies, when I was younger, coming out in August. Having said that, so The Sixth Sense is known as one of the most successful August releases. And I was looking at The Legend of Shang-Chi, released in LA in August, the rest of the country on Labor Day long weekend, and it made $430 million. So that I don't know if that sort of cuts it. Some of it could be superhero fatigue, generally, or origin story fatigue even. Another thing too is that it's unapologetically they're unapologetically Mexican Americans, and which is good, which I think is cool. Yeah. But
or even just
I think that
like I'm thinking, Jim, or even just Mexican. Like, were they in the States?
Yeah.
Even like I didn't necessarily come away with that. Oh, this is part of the USA.
Apparently, it's initially Blue Beetle was El Paso, or there were connections to El Paso, but this Palmera City, I'm not sure. I initially thought it was like Puerto Rico or something like that. But
anyway, sorry, that's a quibble. Back to your point.
Yeah. Well, I also had a hard time placing it too. Like, is it a Caribbean island, or is it part of the contiguous 48 or whatever? And a couple of the characters are there, as we understand, they don't have their papers, basically. They came into the country illegally. Again, not that I care, but that might be a hard sell in the States at this point in time. Yeah. And I would also say that the leads, as good a job as they do. Xolo and Bruna, I didn't know. Xolo apparently is from the lead who plays Jaime Reyes, the Blue Beetle, is from Cobra Kai, which it's on my list. I haven't touched it yet, but I'll get there eventually. And I was unfamiliar with many of the, except for George Lopez and Susan Sarandon and Harvey Guillen. I wasn't super familiar with a lot of the cast, and I think a lot of other people aren't either. Yeah, and that's part of what promotion does.
No, that's great.
And the very last thing, and I know we were talking about this during the writer's strike, but the fact that they couldn't do traditional promotion and get on the shows, Xolo couldn't introduce himself.
Yeah.
The other characters couldn't introduce themselves.
That's a great point.
I had a bit of a criticism that, or not a criticism, but I sort of openly wondered, does that kind of thing really further your box office? Everyone says it does, but I always make up my mind, no interview with Seth Meyers is going to make me want to go see an interview. No offense to Seth
think
Meyers.
This is something we've talked about before, Jim.
Yeah.
Maybe what it does is the interviews, the promotion puts it back on your radar. You may have been sold on the trailer, but given that trailers can come out months or even a year or more in some cases, you kind of forget about it. And so all of a sudden that marketing push, getting it on the Seth Meyers of the world, maybe that's the thing that's, right, that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see that.
Yeah. You never
That's a great point.
Never got a chance to play throwing eggs at Jimmy Fallon or whatever weird game that they have. I sort of suspect, especially when you're unfamiliar with people, that helps to sort of humanize them. Another thing too is, it's a tricky landscape now. I mean, it's pretty much all online. So it is easy to forget. Back in the day, and you and I will remember this, you open a newspaper and there were beautiful ads, beautiful movie ads in the newspaper. Now it's things come and go. You don't even know. You're
kind of, here, I want to look at some of the hot takes, some of the stuff you've covered in that's reputable. But I've got Looper covers some of the same, and folks, just want to say any, let's say, stories I refer to in the page, they're already in the description. But Jim Looper here covers some of that. It does say maybe it didn't have a huge marketing push, which kind of goes with an August release, which has some of those odd, weird toys where nobody knows what to do with it.
Yeah.
Another thing I think Looper mentioned is, it was the weekend of, where does they put it? I think it was the weekend of Barbenheimer.
Oh.
And, it doesn't have here. It does talk about DC's reputation and worthy of a look, folks. And again, that's, but I also want to talk about, you kind of looked at it from one perspective, that we don't know a lot of these people. You might know George Lopez. You can barely remember Ms. Cadillo, if you remember her at all. But let's go to, like you say, about unabashedly Mexican. Let's go to what I'd call the racist reasons. Matt McGloin chimes in Cosmic Book News, talking about how, as he previously wrote, Deadline kept telling us this flick would bring in $30 million, fueled by a strong Hispanic and Latino audience. And then goes on, it's reporting the basic facts. Takes a side swipe, which is, it's interesting. You know what? When you're maybe not racist, but let's say racist adjacent. You take a swipe at your hero, Zack Snyder, who apparently tweeted, just looking forward to taking his kids to see Blue Beetle. Representation matters. This bugged him. The hashtag representation matters and Blue Beetle. He comments, no, instead, we laughably got Zack Snyder tweeting he looks forward to taking his kids to see the movie because representation matters. I don't know, it's a hashtag on a tweet, but sure, whatever. Hey, Zach, is the movie any good? Is it cool? Or are you just taking your kids because representation matters? It's like, it's hilarious. I wonder if they were actually thinking the Snyder cultists would rally behind the tweet and go see the flick. Apparently not.
Yeah.
And here's and I know I'm kind of pushing the envelope here, folks, about the the ism, but here's where he kind of gives up the gives up the game. As how does he put it here, Jim? As I went over in my review, Blue Beetle goes out of its way to shit on white people. And I don't know about you, Jim. I'm pretty fair. Looks like you are too. Did you come out of the film going, oh, I felt crapped on?
No. Not really.
And so diversity, I don't think was the problem, but going back to what you're talking about, though, unabashedly Mexican, a portion of the mainstream public, a portion of it, American, but we got that element here in Canada as well, may not have seen it because of that, but I don't know. I think there's a whole bunch of other wonderful reasons, unfortunately for this film, why it didn't do well. You know, like it had a lot of, it had a lot to overcome. One of the reasons why it had a sub $100 million budget, you know, which is not a lot of money for a superhero movie. And I don't know about you. Do you think, and this goes for folks in the chat, do you think you saw that budget in the screenplay, good or bad?
Well, comparing it to the old guard, which was 85 million, just kidding. It's an old bugbear of ours. Yeah, you know, the other thing that I didn't realize today until I
80 million 3 years ago for
yes.
For
the honest trailers.
Oops, sorry.
Honest trailers turned me on to this, and I looked it up, but initially it was supposed to be an HBO Max project. So it was like going straight to TV, and I guess they re-engineered it for a movie, or I'm not sure at what point they did this or made the decision. You know, part of it too, maybe it's a DC reputational thing. I mean, Flash had just been released earlier this summer, and I don't think it did particularly well. So yeah, I'm not sure. It had a look. You know, I thought it had a good look. You know, I'm not CGI sensitive like some of our like one of our viewers, but you know, I thought it had a good color palette. Actually, like a very interesting and very lively color palette. But yeah, did it? I mean, I sort of joke sometimes.
That color palette?
Yeah. Well,
Blue,
just when they showed
teal,
downtown Palmyra City, it was all like, it was almost like that those pictures of Shanghai that you see, where it's sort of like, is this a real place? And where
that's a great point, Jim.
Lit all different colors, things like that. Yeah, just, and the homes were different primary colors, like in their neighborhood and that sort of thing. So, you know, I thought it had a good look. It didn't seem like a cheap movie to me, but I was surprised that it had moved from one thing to another. Again, that shows sort of maybe DC's chronic mishandling of projects, if I can,
you know,
say that.
I gotta admit, I kind of tilted towards most is, you know, maybe a combination of there's been a few, MCU as well, Marvel, a few misses and big misses early in the year where by the end of the summer, you're a little tired of it. And
Yeah.
Barbie, Oppenheimer, we just took a look at the creator where all of a sudden there's like this weird little maybe mini resurgence. This is just me pulling it off the top of my head. Maybe there's a mini resurgence of more original ideas, original stories that are not, and I said it before, it's Barbie. We've seen toy movies before, but original compared to, hey, let's just dig up another comic book. So maybe that was part of it.
Yeah, and nobody can see every movie, and if you go to one, you're not going to be going to another probably. Like, a lot of us try to see as many as we can or as many as we're interested in. But it's a finite, it's a finite kind of thing. So, maybe the two big hits of the summer sort of steered people in the away from Blue Beetle. But yeah, I don't know. There's other people that go to every opening weekend, or at least they did before COVID. So whether they were knowledgeable about the film or not. So yeah, it's a weird one. And I see, like I said, Shang-Chi was a September release and it did amazing box office.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Although that year will always be kind of an asterisk year, eh? I think just because like that was
2021, just coming out of
2022, wasn't it? The fall of, when did it
I think it was
out?
2 years ago.
Yeah. Just a sec here, Mr. Chaboyko. I'm going to
another movie.
Another
movie in which they completely destroy a bus. Leave the buses alone. What's wrong with public transit and superheroes? I had them in my notes.
Yeah,
Leave the buses alone.
Yeah, you're right. 2021. I stand corrected. Jim, let's move past the box office. Actually, get into the film a bit.
Okay.
What did you think of its storytelling? I got to admit, myself, Jim, at the beginning, I was like, this is a little loose. Do you know what I mean? Like loose. That's the best way. I'm like, am I in good hands here? I guess is the best way I could describe the first act. What about you? What did you think of its storytelling?
Well, I'm generally fairly patient, but I thought it was a little bit slow to get to the punch. Just to sort of, you felt that you were sort of, okay, when are we gonna start moving this on?
Yeah.
In the trailers and just the general presentation of it, and I think maybe in the way that it's seen as a Latin movie. It sort of promises a little bit of like zany energy, and as you get introduced to like Dropa's character.
Hello, Jim.
Have I frozen?
There you go. You're back.
Yeah. Okay.
You're back.
You sort of expect it to be a little bit sort of, almost like I was sort of wondering in terms of zany or like just the wacky energy. I guess. Deadpool would be close to what I would be expected, like a clean, like a not Blue Beetle, sort of the cleaner, non-sexual or not as sexual rather, Deadpool, and it just in terms of the energy, with the colors and even in the start, the credits, very neon, adopting some of like the 1980s kind of like fonts and that kind of thing. And it's just, it's a gentle movie. That's aside from the machine gun fighting and the entire third act, but there's a gentleness to this movie compared to other superhero movies. So it takes its time. It breathes a little, and you're introduced because it's so welded to the idea of family, so that you do have to introduce the family, and get familiar with the characters there and that sort of thing.
That's interesting you say that, Jim, because I mean, and I agree with it's got a heart and it's got like it's got a bit of a hug, but it's also like unabashed. She doesn't say, Grandma, Abuela, does not say, I wish harm to the imperialists. Like, it's death. And people die in this. We're not shown a really gory death or anything, but, it's interesting that it can pull that off, given how, one of the hardest hitting notes near the end is this guy, the villain, the bad, the muscle.
Carapax,
the muscle, the key henchman for the villain. Susan Sarandon's character. Oh, so you have these, like, he ends, it's painful and and there's death, and Abuela's there, death to the imperialists.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta admit, I'm impressed that it was able to kind of go down that line.
Yeah, there's definitely some dissonance, because before, back in the second act, Jaime actually has this guy, the big bad, the Carapax, down, and he's, he's gonna gladiator-like, he's expected to finish him off.
Alcocer.
He chooses not to kill him. The alien says, do not kill, we're not killers. So he doesn't kill him. Of course, this guy comes back to wreak more vengeance. He sort of totally ignores the mercy that was displayed to him. But, so it's fine and good for the main character to say, I'm not a killer. But in the meantime, back in the third act, the rest of the family are killing people, to the point where there's 2 jokes involving corpses, one of which is somebody that gets kicked so severely into a concrete roof that his head sticks there, and only, later on he sort of falls down comically and scares another character. And the other one is when the beetle machine that Uncle Rudy is operating stamps on a corpse and has to shake the body off, off the spike.
Like a dog. A dog trying to get or a cat trying to get some crud off.
And they use that trick where they're faceless, except for a couple. You don't really see their faces. They're covered with shields. So it's that they're almost like robots or stormtroopers. So you can sort of disregard them a little bit. But there's, if you did the counting, there would be hundreds of deaths, and all that. Also, we're not killers, but you're kicking a guy head first into a brick wall. A couple of them are going to die, I think, or through a truck.
You know what? I'm going to push back a little here. Earlier, you talked about dissonance. I think that's one of the achievements of the film. It maintains the tone amongst the death. Like, and maybe achievement's a little hard. Like, I mean, it depends on how you see about violence and comic book violence and cartoon, and I mean, cartoon violence, best word I can describe right now, in film. But I think it's a strength of the film, a strength of the storytelling. And now that I'm thinking out loud about it, Jim, let me bounce this off you, is maybe the way I'm feeling about this, why I feel this way about it, is that the director maintained the comedy, and saved some of the one of the great emotional moments that is about death and everything is for a redeemed villain. The guy who plays the thug, the key henchman, that it saves it for that. So you get these comic moments. It does use the faceless enemy, is it really human? You know, like you say, stormtroopers, you know, we've talked about that before. But yeah, I think it's not dissonant. You don't feel like it's tonally wrong. It's intellectually, I'm thinking about it, but I'm not going, ick.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was just there. Like it's like he's not a murderer. You know, we're not killers. That's literally what the Becky G voice says to him. And I'm trying to remember what the
You're right. Like it is a stated theme.
Yeah,
for the character.
Kajida. That's it, Kajida. And they literally say that, and I think that's the trick, is that you can say, well, he's not going to murder people in cold blood.
Yeah.
If they die in combat, and it's kind of hard that when you got an entire army with machine guns and unlimited ammunition coming after you, it's like, don't hurt anyone. You know, that's not gonna happen necessarily. But we can
apply some of this thinking to some of the crazier comments about what's going on in Palestine / Israel. You know, the occupied territories. Like, I mean, just the they've been at war there for a while.
Yeah.
Why are you now suddenly shocked?
But
that's for another. That's for a different kind of show.
Let's
continue.
Let's avoid that. But anyway, so I think, I mean, there's a little bit of a trick there that they're, I think, pulling a little bit. But, I can see the distinction between not nailing a guy when he's, finishing him off, giving him the coup de grace when he's down versus, what happens in combat. But, it's just one of those things, I think, that sort of stuck out to me a little bit anyway. Not to the point where it's like, well, I don't believe in anything this movie professes to be anymore, but kind of an interesting point anyway.
Jim, I would say this would be a great moment to refer to the chat. And we do have a couple of comments, but I'm kind of surprised as I'm wondering if we're running into some technical difficulties, because the chat just basically stopped it with only one zinger from DMG, which, like, come on.
That seems unlike him.
The View with Drew, he says it. I'm sad that Blue Beetle bombed. It was an awesome flick. And I get that. At the end of it, you feel for these characters. It does some stuff I have not seen in a superhero movie, and I'm going to get to that in a second. It's got a nice vibe. DMG compliments has enjoyed last night's show. Thanks very much, DMG. And then he says Taylor Swift made more money just dating Travis Kelce and singing songs her fans had all heard before. Zing. Then Blue Beetle made the entire release.
So DMG's a Swiftie is what you're telling me.
I think DMG's just artfully observing the obvious here.
He's going to be reviewing eras this week.
Coming back to some of the themes, some of the things it does that I hadn't seen. Early on in the film, Jim, I was really impressed. Early on in the film, and we saw in the trailer, Batman's a fascist. I'm like, oh, okay, well,
yeah.
I agree, but moving on. And then in the movie, there's a moment between Jamie and his sister.
Milagro.
Thank you. And she, where they both say, we're here, we're supposed to stay here, and now they want us to move out of here as gentrification is taking over their neighborhood. But I got to admit, Jim, I was feeling a little cynical about that. Like, it was like, okay, yeah, I know one line's coming up, haven't seen it yet, and I know, well, we got this one, and it's like, well, maybe not state the obvious, but by the end of it, and this is, I think, we have not seen as clearly in a superhero movie before, because all superhero movies are about crime. They're all crime movies. Is something so unabashedly, at least, really talking about the crimes of the wealthy on the poor. And so when you get to the point where the Nana Reyes, the abuela of this clan says, like in these moments, don't ask, not the time to talk about her revolutionary past, which in Mexico and in Central America, like you're going to have every family that isn't Hidalgo, that isn't descended from the Spanish, and a lot of them, but will have some cousin who, has a past in all these revolutionary popular fronts to try and kick out some imperialist bastards, whether it be Del Monte or, on and on.
Yeah.
And so that later when she says, death to the imperialists, it's like, this was earned. This isn't dropped in from nowhere. And you end up having a thing that is a superhero actually for the neighborhood, for the community. They kind of pull their punch a bit with the rich girlfriend. It's not radical, but I think it is different from other superhero movies. Like, I mean, it's something that Spider-Man, part of me is like, where is the Spider-Man version of this? But I don't know. What do you think? Am I just pulling, am I talking out of my ASS?
It is, well, that's when you read that note that he said as a white person he felt crapped on. I was thinking that the guy's probably conflating being white with corporate America. So because it's not kind to corporate America.
No, not kind to rich people.
And of course. And what you have here is a raid on a private residence by a private corporation, which I noted in my notes. I'm like, how is this possible? Like, we have, and they actually say, they don't say we're the cops, but they say we have the authority to, we have the authority to search your house or something to that effect. And I was like, oh, that's yucky, to have this corporate concern throwing their army at the poor Reyes family.
And interestingly enough, Canada has that as well. There is a corporate police force going back to, that harkens back to Confederation. CNCP, our national rail system, which is a private company, full stop, has a police force. A police force, not a security force, but a police force that has full police powers on their land, and they are considered like full peace officers. If they chased you off, they could arrest you. And I mean, I've said this before quietly when I had to meet with these, when I used to work at, meet with these holes when I worked at the city of Winnipeg. I had to keep my mouth shut, but I can now say it's like there's some of the most jumped up, arrogant security guards you'll ever meet. And they love laying down how they're police and how they don't have to share with you. And it's like, yeah, you certainly seem to want to do a lot of stuff on city property, though.
Yeah.
And why are
How'd
you
like
here
if we
throwing
moved
your
you
weight
out of the
around
city there
for a special event? Oh, right. Security, you. Anyway,
Yeah.
enough of my rant. What I am saying is that little old Canada has its own private police force, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
And I'm
so
sure
it's
there's
not,
instances, and I'm
yeah.
sure I've thought of them, and I can't, like, I've witnessed them or read about them, and I can't bring it up right now.
Some
But it was
union
sort of an
busting
interesting.
Pinkertons seem to
Yeah,
get away with,
that's it. I was thinking
you
thinking of Pinkertons. Yeah.
but yeah, and I think that's unique. Of course, folks, if you're seeing this later, and this might be the time to beg for a like, a subscribe, and do we have the analog bell ready, Jim? Ring that bell. Yeah, folks, if you're watching now and you're kind of, what about this superhero movie? Please chime in. I'd love to revisit this, and it's never just a movie. Talking about the politics of superhero movies and how this one's kind of unique. Blue Beetle doesn't go, oh, now I'm tight with the cops at the end. Um,
Nope.
I might have pressed the wrong button. You might have been muted for a while there, Jim. Sorry.
Uh-oh.
But that could have been just me getting wild. I hope you haven't been muted for a while. I don't think
Okay.
you have.
Sure.
But we'll find out later. Jim, don't think we're quite at final thoughts, but we're getting close.
Mhm.
What do you think this movie is about? I mean, we touched on some of the themes, but if Angel was here telling us what he was hoping us to take away, what do you think he really wants? What's the big takeaway he wants us to have after watching this flick?
Representation matters. No, I'm just kidding. Ooh. I would have liked to have been there when Zack Snyder hears the line, Batman was a fascist, although he probably would have picked it up in the trailer. The easy answer is it's largely, I mean, you can say family. I would they didn't really delve into it too much, but more community. It's sort of, in this case, you're talking about the uniqueness of it. It takes a village to raise a superhero, perhaps, is one of the angles. If there's an angle to it.
Yeah.
These people don't in this case, the Blue Beetle doesn't emerge, from a period of solitude and like one butler helping him out or something to that effect. It's brought together, the family witnesses, the chain, the transmore, or what's that?
Transformation.
Transformation. I was thinking of another word, but that works too. So they're all in on it. And they're all, Jaime has to carry the weight, but they are all there for support. And, it's not hidden from him. He doesn't have to keep it a secret, so it's a different take there. That would be my answer.
Yeah. And there's even, it seems, a debate. Yeah. There's that solidarity, that family unity. And at the end that, I'm thinking about the Zack Snyder comment, buddy from Comic Book News, the cheap shot on Zack Snyder. And there's a part of me I can't believe I'm defending Zack Snyder, but it's like, Zack Snyder's all about that lone. Yes, I have family, but it rests on me. I am here alone. I am the Ubermensch. It's almost Nietzschean. Whereas, you really get the vibe at the end of this movie that, oh my goodness. Jamie's strength is you can have a gizmo, and let's say that's the fundamental failure of chord and her main heavy is this is about power and about, do you have the will to exercise it, versus this power is about who you're using it for. That the character choice is not, do I the will to impose this magical power, how much more it will bring me, or if, say, in Superman's case, am I obligated to help these lesser beings? You don't. Here it seems to be, well, what's the point of having it if it's not in service?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going too far there, or what do you think?
No, I think I get it. Yeah, it's. Yeah, I mean, again, it's all about this. I mean, and then maybe that points towards the whole community aspect of it. And had it been 10 minutes longer, all the people come around to help out at the end too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's not the division. There's more of the, like, he's almost embedded, right? As opposed to one person standing up, above the fray. Like Abed in that episode of Community where he's Batman hovering above everyone. He's part of it too. So,
and he needs everybody. Like, he does not save the day. Mm-hmm. Everyone, including, let's say, the girlfriend, the damsel, they all have their own little adventures.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for them, he was hooped. And even at the end, he has a very real choice, but he's also got that sympathy for the devil, the character, and going back to service, of empathizing with somebody who has been exploited and damaged, like so many, it's a child soldiers.
Child soldier, second child soldier reference in a movie in a row.
But you kind of feel that in how they go through the key henchman. God damn it! What is the character's name?
Carapax.
Thank you. Well, for crying out loud, it's not Dunnet-Alcocer. Jeez. Or is it just Raul Max Trujillo?
Trujillo.
Oh my God. Because that was another, there's Alberto Reyes. I'm such a yutz. All right. Anyway, Carapax, that to understand how, and it goes back to the same villain and that same idea of exploitation and taking advantage of these people. And so to have some sympathy for that and some compassion, is part of how he wins, and then everybody comes, the team comes and rescues him, not the other way around.
Yeah.
That
final scene in the old fort, it sort of reminded me of the scene in Doctor Strangelove where the guy says, "You're going to have to answer to the Coca-Cola Company of the United States of America." It's like, you're going to have to answer to UNESCO for destroying that beautiful old fort.
That's a good one. All right, Jim, I think it is time to get into final thoughts. We've been at it for an hour. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Whoopsie. Sorry, wrong branding there. Such is life. But final thoughts. What are yours?
I'm just looking at my notes here really quickly, see what we haven't covered. I have to say I sort of wanted a little more of Harvey Guillen. He's the scientist. He's like the brains behind Victoria, or is it Veronica?
Dr. Sanchez.
Miss Cord's
Dr.
operation.
Sanchez.
The wrongly named Dr. Sanchez.
Yes.
He keeps on saying, my name's not Sanchez, throughout the whole thing. So of course I was waiting for his big line where he says, "My name is," and then he says his full name.
Yeah.
And that was kind of great. You kind of get the sense that he's sympathetic, but you don't get to see him fully turn. And I just would have liked to have seen a little bit. I mean, I like him in everything. He's good in What We Do in the Shadows, and I sort of wished a little more screen time for that character. But it's already pretty. There's a lot of things going on in this movie. The other thing too is that having the actors that are maybe not known so much in English America, that's fine. We've discussed so many times on this series that. We enjoy seeing people that we're unfamiliar with. Doesn't mean that they don't have gigantic careers elsewhere. We just haven't seen them ourselves. You can't see every movie,
or haven't seen them in years.
Yeah, or you might see them in one bit part, or they may be doing Mexican television, or they, and so it's a good chance to see. Like, I like casting people that I don't maybe know too much about. You're not used to their tricks, and it's always kind of a bit of a surprise. But
yeah, no, that's Jim. That's a great. Whoopsie, sorry about that. You're not Cody. That's a great point. Love all that. For myself, I don't know. I gotta admit, I'm just kind of excited. I'm liking this movie even more after a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
It really is a solid see it for me. But I'm kind of excited, but also a little bummed. I'm glad they released this flick.
Mm-hmm.
But I am like, will we see this character again? You know? I don't know. That's a question for everyone in the chat, anyone in the comments. Do we actually think we're going to see Blue Beetle again? I got to admit, I wouldn't even give it 50%. The odds are, I'd say 2-1 against. What do you think? I think we'll see a Blue Beetle 2?
Well, this is evidently coming after. No, it came before this new DC reboot, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's not. It's like when you change the coach of a football team, he's going to bring his own dudes in, his own assistant coaches and things like that. I don't know if poor Jaime has made the team necessarily, but he's a very likable lead.
Sorry, Jamie. I keep calling him Jamie, but yeah, you're right, Jaime. My apologies. Oh, Robert, you Canadian bigot.
He's somebody compared him. I was reading today. Somebody compared him to sort of like mummy Brandon Fraser. I don't think it's quite that. I think he's got his own kind of energy, but yeah, he's a bit of a sweet kid, and yeah, I could see this character develop more. I don't know
what are the chances?
What are the chances? I don't.
Yeah, that's the question.
My brain says not likely.
Yeah, gotcha.
Just yeah.
All right. Well, listen, folks. On that note, I want to say to Dragon Movie Guy, great to see you here. The View with Drew. Check out his channel. I will put links to both in a pinned comment. I also put a card here. You know what? Cody, great friend to the channel, and I dove deep into the recent story of Best Buy getting out of the DVD game. You may want to see that on our companion podcast of this channel. It's Never Just a Movie. And then, next show, we're not sure. So please, one more time, please like, subscribe, and Jim, you got that bell handy? Oh, Jim's frozen. I'm going to have to ring the bell myself. All righty. Folks, I think that's about it. Thanks and good night.